Welcome to today's presentation. In today's work, we are going to introduce a new topic called cell physiology. Cell physiology basically studies the anatomy of a cell and how a cell functions. Previously, in the second topic of our work, we discussed the structures and the basic functions of various parts of a cell. And these parts included them a cell membrane. And as we begin this topic, I would like us to ask ourselves questions regarding our cells. And these questions are three. We are going to ask ourselves, how do the food that we take reach the cells of our body? How does the water that we take reach the cells of our body? And how does the air that we inhale through our noses reach our cells? So there are three basic things to this topic. There is air, there is food, and there is water. And the following are the objectives of the course. 1. Label the components and describe the cell. 2. Distinguish between passive and active transport processes. And 3. Define the terms active transport, osmosis, and diffusion. And probably we could here define what cell physiology is. And cell physiology is a study of cell functions. In other words, cell physiology is all about how materials move in and out of a cell at this basic level. So we are going to study the processes through which substances move in and out of a cell. And we can remind ourselves basic facts about a cell, and one of the facts is that it is a basic unit, structural and functional unit of an organism. And cells vary in size and in arrangements, but all cells have similar components and properties. All cells will have a cell membrane. They will have organelles like nucleus. They will have a cytoplasm. They all have a basic plan. Humans are made up of trillions of cells, roughly around 100 trillion of cells. You can imagine how many billions are those, or rather, how many millions are those, or rather, how many thousands of cells are those. And these cells are normally microscopic. Some of the largest cells are red blood cells, and we also have others which are very tiny. We have the definition of a cell, and we also know that the study of cells is called cytology. A person who studies cells is called a cytologist. Now, cell physiology is one of the areas under cytology. It is a subtopic, or is the subunit of this. So we have the basic model of a cell, and in this basic model we can be able to visualize some of the common organelles that we talked about. We have our mitochondria, we have our nucleus, at this particular point. We also have the Golgi bodies, we have endoplasmic reticulum, amongst other parts or other organelles. In this lesson, our focus is going to be on the cell membrane. And the cell membrane, we probably could ask ourselves, what is a cell membrane? A cell membrane, in our previous topic, we called it plasma membrane. And if you'd rather have a different name, you can call it the plasma lemma. The plasma membrane is a thin enclosure. It is a membrane that encloses the cell content. That means that one function of a cell membrane is to enclose the cell content. The cell content are the structures within the cell and also the materials within it. The structures and the materials. You can have structures like a mitochondria. You can have substances like water inside a cell. They are enclosed together by a cell membrane. And this particular cell membrane also controls the movement of substances in and out. In short, it prevents entry of some while allowing some. So the cells has a certain structure that I would like us to see. And before we see, answer the following question, which has 3 marks. What are the functions of the cell membrane? That question carries 3 marks, so you should give 3 points. The cell membrane looks like this particular structure at this particular point. The cell membrane will have the 2 layers. It will have 2 layers. So the basic plan of a cell membrane is that it has 2 layers. The first layer is this one, and the second layer is this one. So these layers are made up of lipids. Lipids are a type of molecules that we study in biology that make up the living organisms. It makes the structure of living organisms. They just make up fats. So the cell membrane will have 2 layers. It has 2 lipids layers. It has the first layer, which has the outer part, or it is the outer part of the cell, which is the first layer, and the second layer, which is below the first layer. You can remember in a cell, we have inside the cell and outside the cell. So inside the cell, it will be having a lipid layer, and outside it will having a lipid layer. And therefore, the cell membranes are said to have a phospholipid bilayer. Bi means 2. Phospholipid is just derived from the term phosphorus and lipid. So it will have 2 layers. It will also have other substances embedded or which are attached to it, like proteins. And the function of proteins is simply to transport. It is through this that substances are transported in and out of cells. So what you are expected to know out of this is that the cell membrane is made up of lipids and proteins. These lipids are 2 layers. We have the upper layer and the outer layer. And these particular layers determine how materials move in and out, and they give the cell membrane properties. And what are these properties? There are 3 properties of cell membrane. The first property is sensitivity to change in temperature and pH. The reason as to why you can detect the changes in the environment, for example, when it is cold, it is because of the cell membrane on your cells. They can detect. And why do they detect? The protein on the surface of these particular membranes is affected by temperature. You can imagine an egg. If you boil an egg, it hardens up. It changes the structure of that protein inside an egg. So increase in temperature is normally detected by cell membrane because one of the components of cell membrane is protein. pH is all about the acidity or alkalinity of fluids. In the same way, the cell membrane is able to detect when it changes. For example, if you take a lemon, how do you behave? If you take something like that is acidic, something that is alkaline, how does your body behave? The next point is about semi-permeability. Semi-permeability means the ability of the cell membrane to allow some substances to pass through and prevent some. Majorly, the large ones do not pass in, and the small ones are able to pass into the cell or out of the cell. So the cell membrane is selectively permeable or semi-permeable, and this is one of the contrasting features between a cell membrane and a cell wall of a plant. The cell wall of a plant allows all substances to pass in. And finally, the last property is that it possesses electrical charges, or it is polarized. In short, the cell membrane has charges. We know that there are two types of charges, the positive and the negative charges. These charges are very important in helping an organism to detect changes in the environment. We conclude at that point. Remember to subscribe and like this presentation.